I always thought the quiet parts of marriage were the strongest. The routines, the small predictable rituals that make two people feel like a single life with four hands. Tuesday nights were our grocery runs. Sunday mornings were for coffee on the porch and the crossword clip from the paper, her pencil tapping her lip as I read clues out loud. Our toothpaste caps ended up on opposite sides of the sink. She hummed when she folded laundry, always out of tune. After 10 years, I told myself if the seams were going to split, they would have by now. The first hairline crack was a scent, not perfume. Hannah never wore much beside the light rose water I could barely notice. This was sharper, colder, the bracing bite of mental aftershave that didn't belong to me. It drifted from her scarf when I hugged her in the kitchen before wake, a ghost of winter on wool. You switched laundry detergent. I asked, half smiling, half curious. She flinched so quickly I might have imagined it, then laughed. New dryer sheets. The lavender ones were out. I kissed her forehead and let it go. But the scent followed me to the car, clinging to the cabin like a passenger who refused to speak. 2 days later, our neighbor's tabby slipped through our back fence and into the azaleas. I bent to coax her out and saw something wedged under the slat, gleaming like a small fish in the shade. A cufflink, silver, engraved with a single serif letter. See, I held it in my palm, weighed it, felt the tiny teeth of the clasp against my skin. I don't wear French cuffs. None of my friends do either. I took it inside, rinsed off the date, and set it on Hannah's jewelry dish, the one with a chipped edge where she dropped her wedding earrings the night we moved in. That evening, she spotted it immediately. Her hand hovered over the cufflink like it was radioactive. "What's that?" she asked, voice bright, tone sliding. "Found it by the fence. Thought it might be one of your dad's. He wore suits, right?" "Years ago." She forced a shrug. "Must belong to the neighbor. He's always dressed up." "Carl," I said, "he's a mail carrier." She gave a funny little laugh, as if I'd made a joke. "Well, I don't know, Matt. It's a neighborhood. Things show up." I looked at the sea again, polished and smug in the dish. Neighborhood, I told myself. Things show up. We kissed goodnight like we always did. She turned away, tucked her knees up, and drifted. I watched the dark shape of her back breathing, the soft lift and fall. It took me a long time to sleep. After the cufflink came the late meetings. Budget season, she said. The non-profit where she worked, an arts education foundation, relied on grants that required endless proposals and revisions. "We'll be slammed through the quarter," she warned, apologetic, wrapping a scarf around her neck on a Thursday evening. "Don't wait up." I waited up anyway. The house had different sounds when it was just me. The fridge compressor sounded like a sighing child. The old pipes clicked to themselves. And somewhere within those familiar creaks another sound began to emerge, the tap-tap of some patient little thing inside me, a carpenter's hammer building a room I hadn't ordered. I used to be a fix-it person. My dad taught me that if a door stuck, you shave the hinge. If the sink leaked, you tighten the seal. If a tire wobbled, you balanced it. A problem existed to be solved. But this wasn't a problem yet. Not exactly. It was just the sound of a loose-barred underfoot. You could feel it give when you stepped there, but you could still cross the room. I took to walking at night. Our neighborhood was a grid of sleepy streets under a canopy of old maples. Porch lights burned amber. Lawn sprinklers ticked and hissed. I passed windows with shadows moving inside, families rinsing dishes, a teenager carrying a laundry basket, an old man peering at a TV glow, and tried not to picture my own house from across the street. If I stood there in the dark, what would I see? 2 silhouettes in the living room? 1? Would Shadow Hannah tilt her head a certain way when the phone lit her palm? Would Shadow me look up and catch it? "Why are you up?" she asked one night when she came in at nearly midnight to find me on the couch, reading the same page of a book over and over. "Couldn't sleep," I said. "We need to replace the upstairs smoke alarm." It chirped. "I didn't hear it," she said, dropping her keys into the bowl. The clink of metal sounded loud in the still house. "I'm exhausted." We landed the Eastern Grant, though. Big news. "That's great," I said, and meant it. "I'm proud of you." She crossed the room and sat on my lap like she used to when we were younger and rented a 1-bedroom facing the alley, when our couch still smelled like the store and our hands never left each other. She rested her head against my shoulder. The mental ghost touched my nose again, brighter now, as if it had learned my name. "Let's just get through this month," she whispered, fingers drawing circles on my wrist. "Then we'll take a break, drive to the mountains, turn off our phones. You and me." "You and me," I echoed, and tucked the ghost into a drawer. The second hairline crack wasn't a smell or an object. It was silence, new, cultivated, like a patch of lawn that had never grown there before. Hannah, who used to narrate the smallest things, a new intern with a nervous laugh, a donor who wore a brooch shaped like a fox, a child at an after-school workshop who insisted blue was a warm color, began talking in summary. Work was fine. Busy day. You know how it is. She offered her life like a headline, without the article. Meanwhile, my phone lit up with an unknown number around lunch. A text. "Hey, is this Matt? I've got a quick question about a quote for the kitchen reno. I do contracting and remodeling." I texted back. "Sure, who's this?" No reply. Minutes passed. An hour. Then, "Sorry, wrong number." I was about to forget it when a second text arrived. "Your wife told me to ask you. You're handy, right?" My thumb hovered. The air around me felt suddenly gelatinous. In my office, the sawdust smell of cut pine shifted, and the fan overhead wobbled a fraction, a tiny change that made me aware of its slow, circular groan. "Who is this?" I typed. A long pause. Then, "Just making conversation. You're lucky to have her." Lucky. The word settled like an iron coin in my mouth. I showed Hannah that night. She was rinsing lettuce, the water hissing on the leaves like rain. Someone texted me from an unknown number. I said, "Casual." Said they had the wrong number. Then they said you told them to ask me about a kitchen quote. She froze, a heartbeat too long. "That's weird," she said, forcing lightness. "People. Maybe a volunteer." We were collecting bids for the reading room shelves. "I must have mentioned you. I'm sorry if that was awkward. I won't do it again." "No big deal." I lied. "Just strange." She nodded, then focused very hard on the lettuce, as if each rib held a secret instruction she had to follow precisely. I leaned against the counter and watched her carefully. The world narrowed to the rhythm of the faucet and the metallic echo of the sink and the tiny tremor that ran from her shoulder into her wrist. That night I lay awake listening to the house breathe and wondered how long cracks could be ignored before something shifted under the weight you'd always asked it to bear. The third crack came dressed as kindness. On a Friday, she brought home a small box from a bakery across town. "For you," she said, sliding it toward me on the table, smiling wide and bright like when we bought our first used car and pretended we didn't hear the muffler rattle. Inside was a slice of my favorite cake, chocolate with espresso buttercream, the kind from a place we only splurge on for birthdays. I walked past on my lunch break and thought of you. It looked like love. It looked like us. It tasted sweet and carried a faint, bitter aftertaste, something like citrus peel, or like memory. I kissed her, told her she was wonderful, and later, when she showered, I leaned into her closet and smelled her dresses like some animal learning a new world. Rose water, cotton, the faint scent of the dried lavender sachet she tucked in a pocket years ago. And under it all, faint but sharp, that menthol note again, as if a winter hand had brushed each sleeve. "You're imagining it," I told myself. People hug. People shake hands. Offices are crowded. Scents cling. The world is a sticky place. I might have managed to say nothing for another month. Maybe 2. Maybe forever, if not for the ring. It was a Sunday, late afternoon, the sun slanting gold through the living room blinds, striping the wall like the ribs of some giant sleeping animal. Hannah was dozing on the couch, her book open face down on her chest. I was tracing the path of dust motes in the light when her phone buzzed on the coffee table. Usually I ignored it. We'd always had a gentle don't snoop rule that came from trust, not secrecy. But the name that lit the screen punched my stomach in two. See, no last name. I didn't touch it. Not then. I couldn't. Instead, I stared until the screen dimmed again and the room swelled with a hard, ugly sound of my pulse. When she woke, I asked about dinner. We settled on reheated curry. She padded to the kitchen barefoot. Her phone stayed on the table, screen dark as the inside of a well. I watched her move, the easy, familiar curve of her shoulders as she reached for bowls, and I felt it, the pivot point, the hinge on which a whole life could swing toward or away from something you'd never find your way back from. "Hey," I said, "steady. Who see?" She turned, spoon in hand. Too quickly. "Work? We've got a consultant helping with our gala." "Why?" "Just saw the name pop up." She nodded, dropped her gaze, stirred the curry like it needed saving. "Is annoying. Gives everyone initials because he thinks it's witty." "What's his actual name?" She opened her mouth, closed it, opened it again. "Chris," she said finally. "Christopher. He goes by C." "Got it." We ate on the couch and watched a travel show that made our city look like a glossy magazine. The drone shot, the faker and his host proclaiming some taco stand a hidden gem while a line of Camera Prime customers waited. Hannah laughed too loudly at something. I smiled at nothing at all. That night she fell asleep in the curve of my arm, breath warm against my skin. My mind replayed the day like it wanted to memorize each frame before the film burned. At 2:13 a.m., I slid from bed and padded downstairs. The house felt vast and strange. The hallway mirror held a man with salt touched into his hair and a posture like winter. I stood in the kitchen, hands braced on the counter, and stared at the dark window until my own face dissolved and the night behind it looked like a mouth. I didn't go through her phone. I wanted to. God, did I want to. But I told myself if I crossed that line without asking, I wasn't trying to save anything. I was burying it. Still, the need for something solid chewed at me. So I went for solid things. Facts, places, times. On Monday, I left the job site early and drove downtown to the Arts Foundation. I told myself I was surprising my wife with lunch. Flowers rested on the passenger seat, pink tulips wrapped in paper. In the reflection of the elevator's brush metal, I looked like a man in a commercial, the kind that ends with a couple kissing in a doorway. The foundation's office was glass and light and framed posters of smiling children with paint on their hands. The receptionist recognized me. "Matt!" "She just stepped out," she said. "Meeting with a donor at the Blue Finch." She said she might be a while. The Blue Finch sat 3 blocks away, chic and bright with little potted trees along the curb. The tulips in my hand felt suddenly absurd. I almost turned back, but the street was a river and I was already caught in its current. They were on the patio. I saw them before they saw me. Hannah's hair was tucked behind her ear the way she did when she needed to concentrate, and her fingers worried the lip of her water glass. Across from her sat a man in a navy suit too sharp for noon, his jacket cut to fit a chest he clearly maintained like a hobby. He had the handsome, generic face of a news anchor, the kind people trust because they've seen it 1,000 times. A pair of silver cufflinks glinted at his wrists. See, I didn't go over. Maybe I should have. Maybe an open confrontation would have saved me a month of slowly boiling in a pot I pretended wasn't heating. Instead, I stood half-shielded by a planter and watched their mouths move. They weren't laughing. They weren't touching. He leaned forward, spoke low. She shook her head, a small defiant tick I recognized from years of arguments about nothing, tips for a waiter, whether to repaint the bedroom, her mother's habit of giving advice like edicts. He reached across the table. His hand hovered. She flinched. He dropped it. It was a business conversation with weather in it, a storm blowing in off the water, pressure dropping, birds gone silent. I left the flowers on the receptionist's desk with a joke about being a cliché, and walked a long way around the block. The tulips, bright as tongues, blazed behind my eyelids. In the lobby's shadow, something lodged in my chest shifted from worry to a clean, cold thing that helped me breathe. That night, I didn't mention the Blue Finch. I made spaghetti, poured cheap red wine, and asked about her day. She told me the same headline. It was fine. Busy. I nodded, set my fork down, and looked at her like I was measuring a piece of wood before cutting. 3 times. Steady. Level. "I'm going to ask you something," I said, "and I need you to answer me like we're the 2 people who fell in love in a crappy apartment above a pizza place, who told each other everything because we didn't have anyone else." Her face changed by degrees, like a photograph developing in a tray. "Okay," she whispered. "Are you seeing someone?" Silence. Then, "No." Are you sure? Yes. Her jaw was tight. Her eyes were wet. She looked at me the way a deer looks at a light it can't decide is sunrise or a truck. Who's he? A consultant. He's wearing cufflinks with his initial, I said softly. A lot. Her mouth opened. I watched the lie assemble itself and then crumble like a sandcastle in a wave. She closed her eyes. I haven't done anything, she said, voice hoarse. I swear to you, Matt, I haven't touched him. I haven't broken us that way. I exhaled so slowly I could hear it, like a leak you hope is just air. But you thought about it. Tay slipped down her cheeks in twin bright lines. I didn't mean to. His persuasive. His tied to a donor we need. He texts me, calls me, shows up in places he says are coincidences. He made me feel. She bit the word off like it burned. I told him no. I keep telling him no. Is that why you've been late? The menthol on your scarf? The silence. My voice sounded calm. It surprised me. I've been hiding it because I didn't want you to think I'd invited it, she said, hands trembling. I thought I could handle it. We need that money, Matt, for the music program, for those kids. I thought if I manage him, we'd get the grant and then he'd be gone. And the text to my phone? The wrong number that wasn't wrong. Her frown deepened. What? I told her. Plain. She shook her head, terrified and furious at once. That wasn't me. I would never. He must have. She stopped. Her eyes found mine. He must have found your number. How? She swallowed. It's connected. He knows people. He brags about it. He said everyone wants something, and is the person they come to when they can't ask out loud. My palms were sweating. My neck felt cold. I thought of the blue finch patio, his hand hovering, the clean cut of his suit like a blade. I thought of the cufflink in our dish, the sea like a stamped coin dropped into our life. Okay, I said. Then we're not ignoring it anymore. We're done being polite. Matt, her voice was pleading, but not with me. She was pleading with the world to be easier than it was. If we push, we could lose funding. I could lose my job. He could retaliate. He already is. I stood, my chair scraping the tile like the sound of a nail across glass. I went to the bedroom and pulled open the drawer where we kept the file with our mortgage papers and the manual for the oven that never heated evenly. I took out the small black notebook I used when jobs went sideways, and I needed to keep a record, measurements, dates, what I promised and what was delivered. Solid things. Proof. I set it on the table between us. Tell me everything, I said. And she did. The first email, so impressed with your commitment. Hannah, meet for coffee. The flirt disguised as flattery. Your passion is contagious. The insinuations. We can make this happen if we understand each other. The first time he used a number without asking. The first time he waited by her car. The first unsolicited gift left at her office. A silk scarf with a card that said, simply 4HC. When did this start? I asked. 3 months ago, she said. The exact month the menthol ghost began to sit between us at dinner. The exact month the house acquired a new silence. I wrote everything down. My hand stayed steady even when my stomach didn't. When she finished, both of us were breathing as if we'd run a hill. I closed the notebook. The house hummed. Somewhere in the neighborhood a siren began far away and washed past and vanished, the way a life can shrink to the size of a room without you noticing. We'll handle it, I said. Together. She nodded, wiped her face, and reached for my hand. For a moment I believed that was the end of it, that naming a thing took away its teeth. We cleaned the dishes, stacked them like little declarations of order, and went upstairs to bed. She curled into me, and I held her, and the night finally cooled. At 3:07 a.m., my phone buzzed on the nightstand. I reached for it in the dark, careful not to wake her. The glow lit the ceiling. A new unknown number. A message. Nice notebook. Careful carpenters label their nails. Another buzz. A photograph appeared. My breath stopped. It was our kitchen table taken from outside the window, the glass reflecting the flip of our ceiling light. On the table sat the black notebook, its cover closed, my pen aligned beside it like a stanza. The edges of the photo were dark, as if the photographer stood in shadow. A final message. She looks peaceful when she sleeps. Let's keep it that way. The mental scent bloomed from nowhere, sharp as winter and cruel as ice. I sat there in the glow, the phone burning my palm, and listened to my wife breathe beside me. The house was no longer a house. It was a stage, and we weren't alone. I turned the screen face down, slid my hand toward Hannah's back, and felt the familiar lift and fall of her sleeping. Inside that rhythm, my own heartbeat found a new pace, slow, deliberate, the measured tempo of someone who had just discovered what kind of story he was in. Not a romance, not a drama, a horror story that had been pretending for months to be ordinary. Morning light broke across the kitchen like nothing had happened. Hannah stood by the stove making coffee, hair tucked into a mess of bun, humming that same off-key tune I'd loved for years. For a moment, I could almost believe the night before had been a dream. Almost. I sat at the table, staring at my phone. The messages were still there. The photo, the taunt, the threat. Every instinct told me to delete them, to pretend ignorance, but I couldn't. Evidence mattered now. Truth mattered more than sleep. When Hannah turned around, I smiled. She smiled back, soft and weary. The kind of smile people give when they are pretending they didn't hear something crash in another room. "Sleep okay?" she asked. "Mostly." I lied. "You?" She hesitated. Better than I expected. I nodded. Neither of us mentioned the notebook or what we'd promised the night before. The silence between us wasn't heavy. It was sharp, thin enough to cut. I dropped her at work. She kissed my cheek before getting out, her eyes darting toward the glass doors of the foundation like they might reveal something hiding behind them. The moment she disappeared inside, I parked around the corner and waited. It felt wrong, sitting there with the engine off, pretending to check messages while watching the building's front doors. But this wasn't jealousy anymore. This was self-defense. At 9:37, he arrived. The Navy suit again, tailored and smug. Sunglasses even though the day was overcast. See, Christopher strode through the doors with the confidence of a man who thought the world bent toward him naturally. My jaw tightened. He carried no briefcase, no papers, just a phone and that same gleam of silver at his cuffs. I stayed until he left, barely 30 minutes later. When he exited, he was smiling. That small, cruel, knowing kind of smile that men wear when they think they've already won. That afternoon, I visited a friend, David, who worked private security before opening his own firm. The kind of guy who could tell you if your locks were good enough to keep out trouble. "Need a favor," I told him. "Discreet." He looked up from the counter, eyebrows raised. "That bad?" I nodded. Within an hour, 2 small cameras were installed in my house, one at the front porch light, one inside above the living room archway. Motion activated, silent, invisible unless you knew where to look. I told Hannah they were for security upgrades. She didn't question it. That night, after dinner, we tried to talk about anything else, like the garden, a show we used to love. But conversation felt like walking on a frozen lake. Every sentence could crack the surface. Before bed, she asked softly, "Do you trust me?" "Yes," I said, and realized too late that my voice had sounded like a question. The next few days passed quietly, almost eerily so. Hannah's late meetings stopped. She came home on time, cooked, even laughed again. I started to think maybe, just maybe, we had frightened him off, that the darkness had been a passing shadow. Then Friday came. I was in my workshop, sanding a cabinet door, when the alert pinged on my phone, motion detected, living room camera. My stomach turned to stone. I wiped my hands and opened the feed. The image was grainy but clear. The living room. Hannah sitting on the couch, nervously twisting her ring. And across from her, him, Christopher, in my house. I froze, staring. He wasn't touching her. He wasn't shouting. But he leaned forward, talking low, hands clasped like a man delivering a sermon only one person should hear. She nodded once, shook her head, nodded again. Then she stood, walked toward the window, looked out, right toward the hidden camera, and said something I couldn't hear. He followed her, and then the feed cut out. My heart hammered. I grabbed my jacket, keys shaking in my hands. It took 10 minutes to get home, but every red light felt like a lifetime. When I pulled into the driveway, the house looked calm, curtains drawn, porch light on. I stepped inside, calling her name. She appeared from the hallway, pale but composed. Alone. Where is he? I demanded. Her lips parted. Gone. You let him in. He showed up, she said, voice trembling. He said he wanted to apologize. I didn't want to cause a scene on the porch. So you brought him inside. Tears welled. I thought I could control it. Matt. He said he was done, that he'd stopped contacting me. He just wanted to say it to my face. I ran a hand over my mouth, trying to steady myself. What did he want, really? She hesitated. He asked if I told you everything. I said yes. He laughed and said he was smart but not careful. I remembered the text, the photo, the threat. He's been here before, hasn't he? Her silence answered for her. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat by the window, watching the yard, the fence, the shadows beyond the trees. Around midnight, I heard something outside, a soft metallic click, like a lighter or a gate latch. I grabbed the flashlight and stepped onto the porch. Nothing, just wind through the leaves. But the next morning, when I checked the footage, the camera caught it. A figure standing by the fence at 12:04 a.m., motionless. The frame was dark, but the faint glint on his wrist gave him away. Cufflinks. He'd been standing there for 5 minutes, watching the house. By Sunday, Hannah was unraveling. She jumped at sounds, locked the bathroom door even when showering. I caught her checking the windows twice before bed. Her hands shook constantly. Maybe we should call the police, I said. She shook her head. No, you don't know what he can do. He has friends, donors, people who'll make it look like I'm lying. I clench my fists. Then we go over him. I'll make sure he never comes near you again. Her eyes widened. Don't, Matt, please, promise me. I promise. And I lied. Monday, I followed him. He left his office at 6:10. Same Navy suit, same easy confidence. He didn't notice the old pickup tailing him through the downtown streets. He parked outside a fancy wine bar, stepped out, and greeted a woman with a kiss on the cheek. Not Hannah, another. He was a kind of predator who collected admiration like trophies. I watched from across the street until they went inside. Then I jotted his license plate into the notebook. Beneath it, I wrote 3 words. It ends soon. That night, I told Hannah everything, minus the following part. She sat beside me, small and tired, her head on my shoulder. Do you think he'll stop? I think, I said, he'll learn what happens when you push the wrong people. She frowned but said nothing. Her trust was thin, fragile. I didn't want to break it with details, because what I hadn't told her was that the next morning I was going to see him again. Not as a husband, not as a victim, but as a man who builds things and knows exactly how to take them apart. I didn't sleep the night before I went to see him. Not really. I lay there with my eyes closed and measured the house the way I measure a room before I take down a wall, counting studs, listening for pipes, imagining what will shift when I cut through something that looks harmless but carries weight. Hannah breathed beside me, shallow and restless. Twice she woke and whispered my name like she was checking that I still existed. Twice I said I did. By dawn, I had a plan. Not a neat plan. Nothing about this was neat anymore, but something with joints and supports. Something I could build and, if I had to, tear down. I showered, dressed in a work jacket with deep pockets, and slid the small contractor's voice recorder into one of them. In another, I placed a thin zip tie, a roll of electrical tape, and a folded printout, the photo he sent me of our kitchen table. At the bottom, in black marker, I'd written the date and time in one sentence. We talk on my terms. Early start. Hannah asked from the doorway. She had wrapped herself in my old gray hoodie, sleeves swallowing her hands. Big install, I said. It wasn't a total lie. I planned to install a boundary. She leaned against the frame, eyes puffy from sleep or crying. Will you text me? Yeah. She stepped into me and pressed her forehead to my chest. I felt the small trembling through the fabric. I rested my chin on her hair. The mint-eye sting of mental drifted up from nowhere, even though I knew it wasn't on her. It was in me now, like a splinter you can't see but can't stop feeling. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "Me too," I said, and meant it for more things than I could count. I chose the place because I knew it better than he could. A new build on Hawthorne Drive we were framing in, a skeletal house, ribs of timber, no drywall, windows in but no glass, just Tyvek flapping like white flags. No neighbors for 2 lots in either direction. The dirt driveway is still soft where the cement trucks had chewed it. A place where voices travel oddly and footsteps tell you where someone is before you see them. I parked behind the half-erected garage. The October morning was all thin light and long shadows. I sent a text from the burner number David lent me. Blue Finch at noon. No? Then Hawthorne Drive in 30. Come alone. I attached a photo of my own kitchen he had taken. Then another text. You like windows. Let's look through some together. I didn't know if he'd take the bait, but I'd learned something important about men like Christopher. They can't resist controlling the scene. They mistake invitation for surrender. He arrived in under 20 minutes. No navy suit this time. Dark jeans, a black jacket, gloves. And the cufflinks, of course, even on an off-duty morning. The gleam at his wrist like a signature he couldn't stop practicing. He parked at the curb as if the mud would never dare touch his tires. He stepped into the frame of the living room like an actor taking a stage. "You picked a dramatic venue," he said, smiling. The smile didn't reach his eyes. The eyes took inventory. "You like the view?" I asked. My voice surprised me. It sounded even. Solid. A man at a job site. "Good bones," he said, glancing up at the beams. "You do fine work, Matthew." "Mind if I call you Matthew?" "Matt feels folksy." "Call me what you want," I said. "You already call my wife whatever you want." He laughed softly, as if I'd made a witty toast. Then he turned a slow circle and lifted his chin. "My father built houses," he said, like a man offering backstory to make his villainy feel owned. "Cheap ones. Bad ones. We spent summers in half-finished rooms like this, breathing sawdust and pretending it smelled like a future. Maybe that's why I love the smell. Or maybe I love the idea that you think this is your domain, and yet here we are, and I'm perfectly at home." "You were in my home," I said. I didn't move toward him. I didn't raise my voice. "At night, by the fence, outside our window." His lips twitched. "You have a camera," he said. "2, I think, front and living room. You installed them after we met in your house." He tilted his head. "I take that as a compliment." I let out a breath through my nose and pictured myself sanding a rough edge. "You cross a line. You know it. So let's be simple. You stop contacting my wife. You stop showing up at her work, at our house, in our messages. You tell your donor we're done with understandings. And then you disappear." "And if I don't?" he asked, curious, like he wanted to know what a squirrel would do if he nudged it with his shoe. "You'll... what? You'll hit me? Cute. You'll tell the police? Cute and naive. You'll tell a board." He smiled wider. "I am the board, Matthew. Not nominally, but in practice. I am the donor. I am the promise. Do you know how the world works, or do you just install cabinets in it?" I took the printout from my pocket and held it up. The photo of our table glared back at both of us. "You sent this. That's criminal trespass. That's stalking. I don't need a board to care. I need a judge." "Do you?" He stepped a fraction closer. "Who texts from a burner? Who meets in an unfinished property owned by a company with 3 LLCs between you and a name? Who records conversations without telling anyone?" My right hand curled in my jacket pocket around the recorder. He hadn't missed a bulge. He hadn't missed anything. Predators like him don't hunt by speed. They hunt by attention. "You think you can build a case," he said gently. "That's adorable. But I've been building cases since you were teaching yourself dovetails on YouTube. About people. Who they are when the porch light turns off. Your wife, for instance." "My wife," I said evenly, "is the only reason you're not in a trunk." He grinned at that. "There you are. There's a carpenter who cuts past the plaster. He lifted his hands, palms open as if that made him harmless. So let me talk to the man under the manners, the one who keeps lists, the one who doesn't sleep, the one who reads silence like a floor plan. Did she tell you she approached me? I didn't answer. The beams above us creaked in a little wind. She did, he said softly. Not for what you think. Not with her body. With her cause. She asked me, no, begged me, to walk her into rooms she could not walk into on her own. She needed an introduction to the kind of money that doesn't read grant proposals. The kind of money that says, convince me. She didn't beg you, I said. She asked for support. That's her job. And I offered it, he said, generously, enthusiastically. But generosity has a scent, Matthew. Everyone smells it and wants a sip. And then he flicked 2 fingers, sending unseen dust motes spinning. She started showing you the texts. She started saying, my husband thinks this, my husband thinks that. She made you into a shadow that stood behind her in every meeting. A no she could point to. That's useful. You know, a man like you. Solid. Predictable. I'm not a prop, I said. Oh, I know, he said tenderly, and the tenderness was the cruelest thing he'd done yet. I know you're a man who keeps his tools sharp and his anger sharper, a man who believes in straight lines. But homes shift, Matthew. They settle. Sometimes a frame twists. Sometimes the person you built the kitchen for keeps knives in drawers you didn't install. He was trying to move the conversation into fog. I forced it back to ground. Here's the only line that matters. You stay away. Oh, I will take everything you've handed me and give it to people who are paid to care. He smiled one more time, but it slipped. The gap between us filled with a thinner air. You think you're the only one with a recorder? He asked, and tapped his ear. A tiny flesh-colored bud gleamed. You think I don't archive? You think I don't know how to label nails? The words hit me like the first time I miscut a board by an inch and had to rebuild a cabinet door from scratch. Stupid, obvious, preventable. He wasn't just threatening me. He was telling me he had material. My house, my wife, my life. He reached inside his jacket and pulled out a phone, not his usual one, a black, scuffed thing that looked like it had lived in drawers. He tapped it, scrolled, and then held it so I could see without touching. Audio files. Dozens. Names like H, laundry, soft, and M, window, 2:14 a.m., and kitchen, argument, Grant. He scrolled further and tapped bedroom, night, whisper. Hannah's voice, as intimate as a breath against the back of my neck, filled the empty house. I'm trying, okay? I'm trying to fix it before he sees it. He notices everything. He always has. He will tear it apart to make it straight, and the recording clipped. Another voice, mine, said, I'm not tearing anything apart. A beat, and then the faint sound of a drawer closing. The audio stopped. I tasted metal. You bugged my house. He lifted a shoulder. Hannah's office, actually, easy enough to piggyback on a device she brings home. Keys are quaint, Matthew. Wireless is a new spare under the garden frog. My mind jumped to the blue light on the speaker in our bedroom that sometimes blinked when nothing was playing. The way the thermostat app lagged on Wednesdays. The night the living room lamp turned on by itself, and we said it was a surge. You recorded my wife whispering in our bed, I said. My voice didn't shake. The quiet in it scared me. I recorded my donor's asset making promises about deliverables, he said. Don't be provincial. You think intimacy is a church. It's a meeting, Matthew. Minutes get taken. He tucked the phone away, eyes glittering. I didn't send you those texts at night. By the way, the ones that pretended to be your wife? That wasn't me. But I let you think it was. It's instructive to see where a man puts blame in the dark. The floor tilted under me in some old familiar way, like when I'd misjudged a joist in a farmhouse and stepped onto a patch that sagged. If not you, who? He smiled again, small and slow, and for the first time I saw something like genuine pleasure, not at my pain, but at the revelation he was about to deliver, the flourish of a magician. You, Matthew. Me. You, or the version of you she carries, he said. She hears nights talking back. You think silence is empty. Some of us know silence repeats us. She grew up in a house where the quiet always had a voice. That's why she hums out of tune. Did you know that? To drown it. She learned to make the noise first so she wouldn't have to hear the other kind. He tilted his head. You scare her when you get quiet. You don't know her, I said. But the words were tin. And he knew it. I know she told me you don't shout, he said. That you only ever get precise. And precise men are the dangerous ones. He took a step closer. The raw floorboards murmured under his boots. This is where you tell me to leave. This is where you say final warning. And this is where I tell you, it's not going to be final because I don't do warnings. I do outcomes. I saw his hand move before he did it. I saw the flex in his shoulder and the angle of the wrist as he reached for my jacket pocket. The recorder, the proof. I caught his wrist midair. The cufflink gleamed an inch from my thumb. A serif C. The tiny teeth of the clasp bit my skin. In some childish part of me, I felt an urge to snap it off and keep it like a merit badge. Proof that the monster bled. Don't, I said softly. He smiled through clenched teeth. There he is. I twisted his wrist just enough for nerves to sing without breaking anything. He swallowed a tiny noise like a man who refuses to admit the soup is hot. I let go. He stepped back, rolling his hand, eyes bright with a new kind of attention. Respect isn't the right word, but it was something adjacent to it, cold and sharp. I wanted to like you, he said. I really did, but I'm going to enjoy what happens next. Here's what happens next, I said. You leave, and then I go to your wine bar and your donor breakfast and your foundation galas, and I introduce myself to your friends as a man who will not stop talking about you on the record. I show them the texts. I play them the audio. I explain how you help children by standing in yards at midnight to photograph their teachers' kitchens. We'll see who keeps wanting to be seen with you once he stops standing for currency and starts standing for contagion. He watched me the way a cat watches a toy, assessing how much it will fight. You think shame works on men who don't feel it, he said lightly. I think money does, I replied. And your kind of money hates mess. A long, thin silence opened between us. He stared past my shoulder, calculating. He didn't answer me because he wasn't talking to me anymore. He was talking to numbers, to risk, to the way reputations leak. Without another word, he pocketed his hands and turned toward the door. He took 3 steps and then stopped. By the way, he said, as if he had remembered to tell me where he'd left the salt. The cufflink in your dish? Not mine. He left. I stood in the skeleton of the house with the wind tugging the Tyvek and the recorder warm in my pocket, and tried to decide whether he'd lied or told a truth specifically designed to rot. Not his. Whose? Then, our neighbor Carl, the mail carrier, a contractor, a board member, or had he simply plucked the one detail that had stuck under my skin and flicked it to make me itch? I waited until the sound of his engine dissolved into the morning traffic. Then I sat on a bare joist and listened back to the recorder. It had everything. His voice, his admissions, his threats, the way he said outcomes, the way he said Hannah's name like a coin. Proof. Solid. Edges I could hold. I texted David. Need a meeting. Today. Bring your lawyer. Then I drove home. Hannah was at the kitchen table with a mug of tea going cold, staring at nothing. When she saw me, she stood so quickly the chair skidded. Where were you? I met him, I said. No preface. No softening. He won't stop, but he's worried. She went white. You promised me. I promised you I'd keep you safe, I said. And I will. I put the recorder on the table. He bugged our house through your office devices. I'll tear this place to studs if I have to, but we're going to find every listening thing he hid in our lives and take it apart. She looked at the recorder like it was a grenade. What did he say? That he's the board, that he's the donor, that he believes shame is a toy, and that the cufflink in our dish isn't his. Her head jerked. What? Exactly, I said. Either he's lying to make me doubt you, or someone else dropped that cufflink at our fence. She pressed her fingers to her mouth. I don't know anyone with. I mean, at work, the gala committee, the new treasurer, Colin, wears suits, but She trailed off, eyes distant. I don't know. Okay, I said. Then we find out. We list names with C. We check sleeve for glinting wrists. My phone buzzed on the table. Unknown number. I stared at it like you stare at a snake on the path. Don't, Hannah said. I answered. Static. Then a voice I didn't recognize. It was wood-smoked, older, unhurried. Mr. Reynolds. Yes. You're a carpenter, the voice said, like it was a fact that mattered to the world in a particular way. So you know the importance of joinery. The places things meet. The places things fail if you don't cut them true. Who is this? A man who prefers his name in the second act. He said mildly, You've made a move, Mr. Reynolds. It was a good one. Consider me impressed. Consider Christopher nervous. Consider yourself noticed. I put the call on speaker. Hannah's eyes widened. She mouthed, Who? You sent the midnight texts. I asked. A pause. No, but I know who did. I know many things you do not. For instance, a cufflink with a serif C that was not his. For instance, an endowment your wife's foundation is about to accept with a clause in the fine print no one has read closely enough. What do you want? I asked. What everyone wants. The voice said, leverage, and to be the one who offers a solution after creating problem. He chuckled softly. I'm giving you a chance to get ahead of it because I like careful men. Careful men make clean moves, which make clean exits, which I admire. Hannah shook her head. No. Her hand found my wrist and held like she could keep my pulse inside. If you're so helpful, I said, prove it. Another pause, then a soft chime on my phone. A file appeared, a PDF. Bylaws _amendment _draft _C1.pdf. Page 7. The voice said, read the last paragraph. I opened it. Legal language coiled across the screen. I skimmed until I found it. In cases where donor intent is material to program execution, the donor's designated representative may request programmatic oversight for a reasonable period to ensure compliance. A donor's designated representative. In other words, Christopher. A door opened in a wall I hadn't known was there. He wouldn't just whisper from porches. He could walk through policy. We didn't vote on this, Hannah whispered, leaning over my shoulder. This isn't real. We didn't. Our council would never. Drafts are drafts, the voice said. Signatures are signatures. The man you met this morning is impatient. Impatient men make sloppy mistakes. He's adding language faster than your board can read. By the time they notice, it will be stamped and filed. Who are you? I asked again. And why tell me any of this? He sighed, almost fond. Because I told you, I like joinery. I like the moment where pieces meet. We are approaching one. Consider this a courtesy. There are 2 wolves around your house, Mr. Reynolds. You've seen one. I'm the other. I don't need to stand by your fence to look in. The line went dead. I stared at the screen until my eyes dried. Hannah tugged my sleeve. What is happening? I feel like... She squeezed her eyes shut. I feel like our life is a room someone else drew. It is, I said quietly, but we know how to redraw rooms. I called David. Within an hour, he was in our kitchen with a signal detector and a face I had seen on him twice. Once when a client ex had installed a GPS in her trunk. Once when a neighbor's kid was found by the river and the neighbors weren't telling the whole truth. He swept the house room by room. We waited in the hall like nervous parents while a surgeon worked. He found 3 devices. One behind the faceplate of the upstairs thermostat. One inside the living room lamp's base. One inside the smart speaker in our bedroom. No surprise there, but seeing the tiny board in his hand made me want to throw every wire in the house into the yard and salt the ground. Not amateur, he said. Not professional pro, either. Corporate private grade, which is nastier, in my opinion. It pretends to be legal by virtue of its packaging. We bagged each device like wildlife. He took them to analyze. Then he sat with us and listened to the recorder from Hawthorne. When Christopher's voice said outcomes, David's mouth tightened like a knot. Lawyer can use this, he said. But more important, We use it to make him want to settle quietly. Guys like this don't fear jail. They fear depositions. Paper. Record. He tapped the table. We should also talk to your wife's board chair. Today. I'll call her, Hannah said, hand shaking as she reached for her phone. She stopped, looked at me. I'm scared, Matt. I know, I said. Me too. She called. The chair, Evelyn, answered on the second ring. We went on speaker. We told her everything, or almost everything. The harassment, the devices, the draft amendment, the threats, the photo taken through our window at night. Silence on the other end felt like a bridge flexing in wind. Come to my office, Evelyn said finally. Her voice had iron in it. Do not email me anything. Bring the recorder. Bring the devices. We involve counsel. We do this correctly. We agreed. We hung up. Hannah stood, smoothed the hoodie like it was a blouse, and looked at me the way she looked at a room right before a meeting, ready to perform being fine. Just one more thing, I said. The cufflink. She made a face, weary and bewildered. Matt! I know, I said. I know. But I need to stop that itch before it opens a wound we don't have time to bleed. I went to the dish and picked it up. The silver sea winked at me. I turned it over in my palm, thumb finding the tiny teeth of the clasp. The backboard jeweler stamp. Caro and Hale. A high-end men's store across town. I'll swing by, I said, if I can get a list of purchases. They won't give you that, David said. Privacy. Maybe, I said, but sometimes salesmen remember faces. And wrists. He nodded once. Don't go alone. I'll go with him, Hannah said. No, David and I said at the same time. She lifted her chin. He wants me scared in this house, she said. I won't be. I wanted to argue. I remembered the voice on the phone, 2 wolves. I remembered the audio file names. I remembered how she had looked at me in the morning as if I were the one who might be gone by night. I swallowed what I wanted and chose the thing I needed. Fine, I said. We go together. Daylight. We stop by Evelyn's after. Then your counsel. We gathered keys, the bag bugs, the recorder, the cufflink. I turned to go and saw the notebook, the black one, still on the table. I picked it up and tucked it under my arm. Why? Hannah asked, nodding at it. Because he told me to be careful with my labels, I said. He wanted me to know he reads my lists. So I'm going to make sure the next list he reads is the last one he ever gets to look at. We stepped out into the afternoon. The sun lay flat and bright on the street. Somewhere 2 houses down a dog barked and someone watered a hanging fern and the world insisted on being ordinary even as our particular patch of it tilted. At the corner, a car idled with its engine off, an old sedan, brown, forgettable. It had been there before, I realized, at odd times over the past week. I only noticed it now because the man in the driver's seat lifted his gaze just enough for me to see his eyes in the rearview mirror. Not Christopher. Older, thinner, a face for second acts. He smiled without showing teeth, turned the key, and rolled away slow. Do you know him? Hannah asked. No, I said, but he knows us. 2 wolves, she whispered. Not for long, I said. I wish I believed myself. Because into that bright, ordinary afternoon, carrying our evidence and our fear like groceries, we walked toward the kind of truth that doesn't make a marriage stronger or a house safer. The kind of truth that takes the careful joinery of a life and finds the one cut you made a fraction of, and splits everything along that line. And that wasn't even the part that shocked me. The drive to Caro and Hale took 30 minutes, but every light turned red. Hannah sat beside me, hands tight in her lap, eyes fixed on the passing trees. Neither of us spoke. The bag with the listening devices and recorder rattled once on the seat, between us like a small animal trying to escape. The jewelry store sat on a corner of the old downtown, all glass and quiet. A bell chimed when we entered. The man behind the counter had the careful smile of someone who sells things that could feed a family for months. Help you? He asked. I set the cufflink on the counter. Need to know if you remember who bought this. Or at least when. He picked it up with a cloth, turned it in the light. Our C-Series. Sterling. Custom engraving. Let's see, He vanished into the back. The sound of a drawer opening echoed faintly. Hannah whispered, "He won't tell you. Privacy laws." "Maybe he'll remember," I said. "Maybe he already does." When the man returned, his expression had changed, just a little tightening around the eyes. "That set was sold 6 months ago," he said. "We only made 3. One to a Mr. Carson, one to a Mr. Coleman, and one to a Mr. Collins. All local." Hannah blinked. "Collins?" He nodded. "First name. Gregory, I think. Picked them up himself. Nice fellow. Said they were a gift." The name hit like a hammer missing its mark, but still cracking something inside. Gregory Collins. Evelyn's husband. Evelyn, the board chair we were about to meet. We didn't speak until we were back in the car. The city moved around us in its usual rhythm, oblivious. "She's protecting him," Hannah whispered finally. "That's why she sounded so calm. That's why she told us to come in person." I gripped the wheel tighter. Or is protecting her. Either way, they know more than they said. "Do we still go?" "We go," I said, "but we don't go blind." I slipped the recorder into the inside pocket of my jacket. Hannah stared out the window, her reflection pale in the glass. Evelyn's office was inside the old courthouse building the foundation leased downtown. The marble floor amplified every footstep. She met us in the doorway of her suite, all professionalism and pearl earrings. "Come in," she said smoothly. "You must be exhausted." Her office smelled of lilacs and paper. On her desk sat 2 cups of tea already poured. She planned this. "Gregory's on his way," she added, too casually. Hannah stiffened. "Gregory Collins." "Of course. He's part of our finance committee. You know that." I saw the tremor that went through Hannah's hands and realized she hadn't known that. Evelyn gestured for us to sit. I didn't. "Before your husband arrives," I said, "maybe you should hear this." I placed the recorder on her desk and hit play. Christopher's voice filled the room, smooth as oil. "I do outcomes." Evelyn's smile froze. She didn't look surprised. That told me everything. When the clip ended, she sighed softly. "You shouldn't have come here." The door behind us clicked. Gregory Collins entered. Older, tall, silver hair, and yes, silver cufflinks with a serif C that caught the light. "Hello, Matthew," he said pleasantly, as though we'd met before. "We haven't," I said. "Not formally," he replied. "But you've been in my houses. Your firm did the oak paneling on our summer place." I didn't answer. Evelyn closed the blinds with a single tug. "Let's all stay calm." Hannah's voice broke through, sharp. "You knew about him, didn't you? About Christopher." Gregory adjusted a cufflink. "We knew he was ambitious. We didn't know you'd provoke him." "Provoke?" I said. He smiled faintly. "Everything is leverage, Mr. Reynolds. Your wife's grant, my wife's board, his money. We've all been working toward the same goal until you decided to build a crusade." "He harassed her," I said. "And you have recordings," he said, nodding toward the device. "Recordings of a donor who, until yesterday, had every intention of doubling our funding. Recordings made without consent. Tell me, who do you think the press will believe? The respected consultant or the angry husband with a temper?" I felt Hannah's hand brush mine. Small, shaking. "Why are you doing this?" she asked. Evelyn answered, voice almost gentle. "Because the foundation is more than one woman's discomfort. You could have come to me quietly. We could have handled it. But you went to war. And wars need casualties." Gregory set an envelope on the desk and slid it toward me. "Inside is a non-disclosure agreement and a check that will make you forget every file on that recorder. You walk away, you move, you build somewhere else. She keeps her job, we keep our funding, and the world keeps turning." The paper inside the envelope smelled faintly of ink and fret. I looked at Hannah. She was staring at Evelyn, not angry now, just tired, like someone watching a flood she'd warned everyone about finally reach her door. "Do you still think we can fix it?" she asked me softly. I closed the envelope and put it in my pocket. "I think we can cut it clean." Evelyn frowned. "What does that mean?" "It means," I said, "you don't patch rot. You remove it. Then I press play again, on a different file. Not Christopher this time. Evelyn, from our earlier call. Bring the recorder. Bring the devices. We do this correctly. Her eyes widened. She realized, too late, that I'd been recording every word since we entered. You think you can, she began. The phone on her desk buzzed. She froze, glanced at the screen. The name that flashed there made her go pale. Unknown caller. I picked it up before she could. Mr. Reynolds, said the familiar voice, the man from the second call. Calm, almost amused. You're standing in a room with the wrong enemy. Walk out. Now. Who are you? I asked again. Later, he said. If you stay, you'll both disappear into paperwork. If you leave, I'll make sure Christopher does instead. The line cut. Gregory stepped forward. Give me the phone. I pocketed it. No. His smile cracked. Then you're a dead man walking. I reached across the desk, grabbed the recorder, and turned to Hannah. Time to go. She didn't hesitate. We moved fast, through the door, down the marble hall, past the receptionist calling after us. I half expected security, but no one stopped us. Outside, the air felt too thin, too bright. We reached the truck. My hands were shaking as I turned the key. Hannah whispered, Matt, what if they come after us? They already did. Then what do we do? I looked down at the envelope in my lap, then at the recorder between us, the red light still blinking. We finished the cut, I said. We make it straight. That night we didn't go home. David set us up in one of his safe rentals, a half-furnished bungalow with mismatched curtains and a smell of paint. He listened to everything we told him, eyes narrowing. You stumbled into something bigger than a jealous consultant, he said finally. Funding laundering. Political donors. The board's just a front. That voice on the phone, whoever he is not wrong. You're standing between two wolves, and they are fighting over who gets to own the pack. Can we bring the police? Hannah asked. David shook his head. Not yet. You don't walk into a station with half a story. You gather the rest. I looked at the notebook on the table, the black one. Every page filled now. Names, times, code from the devices, notes about the calls. A joinery of madness. At the bottom of the last page, I wrote 4 words. Cut straight. Don't splinter. Hannah came to stand behind me. What if the other wolf calls again? He will, I said. And when he does, we'll find out which one's been building this house around us. Outside, somewhere in the dark, an engine idled and drove off slow. I didn't move. I just listened until the sound was gone, because the truth wasn't finished yet. And that wasn't even the part that shocked me.